So, have you ever felt just completely stuck? Today, we're going to dive into some of the big ideas from the book, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. It really gets into that overwhelming feeling that, let's be honest, a lot of us have in this crazy modern world.
I mean, let's just start right there. Have you ever felt totally lost? Like you're tangled up in this messy web of your own worries and doubts? It's that feeling of being overwhelmed, not by what's happening outside, but by the chaos going on inside your own head.
And hey, if that sounds familiar, you are so not alone. Everything we've been through in the world lately, especially with the pandemic, has just dialed up these feelings for millions of people. It's left so many of us feeling frustrated, stressed out, and just plain uncertain. But here's a thought. What if the solution isn't about changing everything around us? What if the real key to getting through all this uncertainty isn't out there at all? What if it's about tapping into the incredible power of our own minds? Okay, let's get into it. So, first things first, we've got to understand the problem. And that's our tendency to get stuck just spinning our wheels mentally. Mental overload. We try to think our way out of every single problem, but sometimes that's the very thing that's trapping us. I want you to think about this question for a second. It's so simple, but so powerful. Worrying feels like we're doing something, right? But does it actually change a thing? It really highlights a fundamental truth. Our conscious, thinking minds, well, they have limits. Now get ready for this number, 200 trillion. According to researchers, that's roughly how many bits of information are zipping around inside your brain every single second. That's the unbelievable subconscious power you're working with. So our conscious mind trying to overthink a problem, it's like one person trying to shout directions in a roaring stadium. It just can't compete. So here's the bottom line. Your brain is an absolutely amazing machine. But, and this is a huge but, like any machine, it has its limits. When we try to force it past those limits by just worrying and overthinking, we don't find solutions. We just find stress, anxiety, and sometimes it can even make us physically sick. And this brings us to what is maybe the most powerful idea in this whole discussion. It's the book's central thesis, that our thoughts aren't just these passive things that happen to us. Nope, they are active, creative forces that are literally shaping our reality. This quote from Emerson, it just nails it, doesn't it? It lays out this incredible chain reaction, this amazing domino effect, and it all kicks off with something that seems so small, so insignificant, just a single thought. And this just breaks it down perfectly. It starts with a thought, repeat that thought enough, and it sparks an action. Repeat that action enough, and it becomes a habit. All those habits, they come together to form your character, and your character, well, that ultimately creates your destiny. It is a direct line from what's in your head to what happens in your life. And look, this isn't some trendy new idea. It's presented as this timeless, universal truth, backed up here with a biblical view. The verse from Proverbs puts it so simply. What you think, deep down in your heart, that's who you become. Our thoughts are literally the seeds of our identity. Okay, so if our thoughts are really that powerful, what happens when they're always negative? Well, that leads us to the dark side of this principle, the downward spiral, where unchecked negative thinking can have some really severe consequences for our health. And this brings us to this key concept, psychosomatic illnesses. It sounds like a big fancy word, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Psyche is your mind, and soma is your body. So we're talking about real physical conditions that are either caused or made way worse by emotional stuff, like stress and anxiety. And we're not just talking about feeling a bit off. The source points to some very concrete, very real examples. We're talking chronic migraines, constant fatigue, painful skin conditions, serious stomach and gut problems, high blood pressure, even a weakened immune system. The connection between a stressed out mind and a sick body is no joke. And it's not just physical. The mental and emotional toll can be immense. When your mind gets stuck in that negative gear, it can create this vicious feedback loop. It can lead to clinical depression, anxiety disorders, and this really destructive pattern of self-sabotage, where your own actions just keep proving your negative beliefs right. Okay, I know that was all a bit heavy, but this is where it gets good. This is the empowering part. This whole last section is about how to actually win the battle for our minds and find some peace, using the solutions laid out in the book. So this becomes the million-dollar question, right? If our thoughts are so powerful,
how in the world do we get in the driver's seat? How do we actually fight back against all that negativity and start building a mindset that leads to health and peace, not sickness and chaos? Well, the book offers a whole toolkit of practical strategies. Things like actively practicing gratitude, which basically trains your brain to scan for the good stuff instead of always focusing on the bad. It talks about using positive affirmations to literally rewrite the old, unhelpful stories we tell ourselves, or using creative visualization to build a mental map of where you want to go. The core idea here is to be proactive, to intentionally fill your mind with good things, and just as importantly, to guard it against the negative stuff. And what's really fascinating is that the book gives us two different frameworks to understand this inner battle. On one hand, it brings in the classic psychological model from Freud, the whole id, ego, and superego thing, to help us understand what is going on in that conflict inside us. But then it also presents a spiritual guide, the Holy Spirit, called a helper, to offer a how to navigate those thoughts and figure out what's true and what's not. And really, it all kind of boils down to this. This is the ultimate advice offered up, summed up perfectly in this verse. It's basically a direct instruction manual for our minds. It's not just about trying to stop thinking bad thoughts. It's about actively, intentionally choosing to fill our minds with things that are good and true and right. So we end up right back where we started, thinking about the incredible power of a single thought. If it's true that our thoughts are the seeds of our actions, which become our habits, which form our character, which create our destiny, well, then the final question is a really personal one. What seeds are you planting in the garden of your mind today?